about the first steps of the project, the literature review, an analysis of best practices and standards in ocean observation, and a first view to the prototype of the IT platform developed. And all that from a highly experienced and reliable team. Here, ETT, Italian ICT and creative company within Sky Group that develops big data management systems. SMHI, Swedish governmental agency with more than 100 years working on marine environments. IEEE, with presence in more than 190 countries, plays a key role in fields like computing, telecommunications, and power systems. Maris, company located in the Netherlands, is highly involved in marine and oceanographic data management services and develops services and applications in these fields. GeoMar, the global marine research institution located in Kiel, Germany, it focuses on interdisciplinary studies on ocean systems encompassing physical, chemical, biological, and geological processes. The European Marine Biological Resource Center, a European research infrastructure that supports marine biological and ecological research, operating through a network of marine stations in 10 countries, and CTN, or Marine Hour in the region of Murcia, Marine Technology Center, association composed of marine and maritime naval companies, research centers, universities, and public outreach. With high expertise in hydroacoustics and underwater noise, the aim they pursue is to help companies improving their competitiveness by means of innovation and contributing to the blue growth of the. And without further delay, let's start with the launching of this seminar. So you have the floor, Noelia Ortega, Director of CTN, the Marine Technology Centers, his master's in automation and electronics with advanced studies in digital technologies, co-founder of the regional maritime cluster and also the Spanish innovation and technological cooperation project for the blue economy with a focus on sustainability and digital technologies. Noelia is also advisor for the European Commission in blue economy. Antonio Novellini, research manager in ETT, PhD, biotechnology and bioengineering, master biomedical engineering, certified data scientist with more than 15 years of expertise in research and innovation projects. From 2008 to 2010, he served the European Commission JRC as senior researcher. Welcome, Antonio, again. And Ms. Zoe Constantino, policy officer from the European Commission, DG Mare, marine scientist with master and PhD degrees, specializing in integrated coastal and marine management and the interface between science, policy, and society. She works as a policy officer at DG Mare, where she oversees the European Marine Observation and Data Network and contributes to the development of the European Digital Ocean Tool. Please, you can now take the floor.
So, just 1 minute from my side. Please, welcome. First, to thank you, Lucia, and the Murcia Region Office for hosting this meeting and for helping us in not just in this contract, but in several contracts that you have in collaboration with CTN also. So, well, for me, it's just to say thank you for being here. Thank you also for all those who are attending us in web streaming and following this meeting web streaming. So I think this is one project that Antonio can describe very well, and also Zoe can describe as the relevance and the impact of this project, that is a small project, but that can have a very relevant impact in ocean observation. And it is very important for the ocean community to apply first to understand, or at least to identify, to know which are those best practices to follow in ocean collection, data collection. But also, it's very important to have at least a platform, a way to know which are the best practices and which standards can apply to my data collection activity. and also to have this information available for the scientific, for our teams, because the institution, the organization that are today and that are following this meeting by the streaming are those who are involved in a lot of campaigns and in a lot of programs, data collection like EMONET. So just to say hello, just to say we have I hope, a fruitful workshop, and to give the floor to Antonio.
Thank you very much. So welcome. Thank you everybody for joining us in presence remotely. And the story behind is very fun, because a couple of years ago, with some of the colleagues, we were talking how to attach, how to connect some of the best practice to some of the data that we are already making available in the European Marine Observation Data Network. And especially for physics, this is a quite relevant topic. So we were already guessing how to improve the metadata of the data sets in order to include also the links to the best practice that has been used, and in order to better understand which kind of data can be grouped with other kind of data, understanding the uncertainty. And then it came out the tender for applying this. So we said, okay, this should be us. And so we are very happy that we took it, because it's really a piece of the puzzle that we try to build together. So this was just the idea behind it. So we are really happy about this prototype that we are demonstrating, starting up today. The idea is to keep working on that and, of course, improve it in the future. And then we hope that Commission like it and help us to improve it. So with this, help us.
The Commission. As well, and the European Commission. Marine knowledge and ocean observation, thankfully and positively, gains attention by the day and by the hour. It does so because it's important, but it also does so currently because we are facing a number of challenges. This study is part of a bigger puzzle of the work of DG Mare and the European Commission on Ocean Observation in putting attention in marine knowledge, in putting attention on what marine knowledge can produce and how marine knowledge can support policy, blue economy, research and innovation in society. And there are multiple ways to do so, and we showcase them through a lot of work. But it's often very difficult to explain that this starts by coherent ocean observation that is taken in a coherent manner, not only in the European level, but in the global level. So this work has the foundation of what we want to build in providing marine knowledge to users in an understandable way. It's extremely important, and it's part of supporting the Ocean Observation Initiative that aims both to bring more coherence in the European level in ocean observation, but also to increase the way that we collaborate with others outside the European. And currently, this becomes more and more important and more and more relevant. And hopefully, the actions that the Commission is going to take in the future are going to support more of this kind of work, to stabilize it, and to make it implementable first across Europe and then, who knows, beyond. We hope that we will manage to have continuation of what is happening currently, but still we see this study as the beginning and as a part that is going to be attached to the Ocean Observation Information Technology Platform. That is also an upcoming part of the work. And I think that the most important message from the point of view of the European Commission is that the marine knowledge community is a small community in Europe. Most of us know each other. Most of us have worked with each other in one or the other setting. And it's extremely important that this community works together towards common goals and collaborates in order to explain also to all the users of marine knowledge how what they use is based on these observations that our institutions are taking, and how investing more in these observations is going to bring more added value to their work. Thank you very much. So let's start now from the bottom. What is a best practice and what is a standard? Let's learn about it from the experts who have been working on this. So please, we are welcoming now Cristian Muñoz from IMR. With a solid background as marine scientist, he brings over 12 years of hands-on experience working at sea, both in coastal and open ocean environments. He has extensive expertise in the design, implementation, and management of ocean observation systems, covering the acquisition, processing, analysis, and management of physical, chemical, and biological data. And also Jay Perman from IEEE. He's currently assistant professor in the Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering at the University of Colorado and director of Fort Bridges in Liberty Township, Ohio. For the last decade, he has collaborated with France in research and development. His expertise covers sensors, remote sensing, and information systems. Please, you have the floor.
Probably, yeah. Thank you. Just forward and back. Good morning, everybody. I think we can all appreciate the comments about ocean knowledge and the importance of that Zoe mentioned. I also heard the collaboration and the needs to work together. And that at a high level is very, very important with the devil's in the details. How do we do it? What do we do together? And where do we go with it? And I think what we'd like to do with myself and Christian right now is talk a little bit about that first level of detail of how we approach collaboration and interoperability and work as a community together. And with that, we have the first presentation of today, which is standards and best practices in ocean observing. And the session one is the state-of-the-art showcase of how do we select best practices and what goes into the repository. And that's what we'll discuss now in the next few minutes. And I'd like to emphasize with Christian our thanks to what has been a very, very good team on a complex issue of going through methods and actually deciding what should be, what shouldn't be, et cetera, et cetera. So I won't read the names, but please see your own name there or see it from others. Okay, so let's take the first step. In this presentation, we really have two major themes. One is the process for collecting and analyzing the content. And the second is to raise questions with you of how to make it sustainable. Because if we do it once, it doesn't retain its value. And so we're going to do those two. I will talk just for the first part here, then Christian will take over and go ahead through both the content and sustainability. Of course, if we're going to start in this area, the first question is, why do we want best practices and standards? Because if we don't know that, we can't focus our work. And so let me introduce that. There are two words I want you to think, two words I want you to remember. One of them is interoperability, because that's the core of what we're doing. We want to be able to, at a European level and at a global level, have data such that it's taken in the same way. We understand the methods and we move forward with that. Of course, you have to adapt to regional. We've been working with countries not in Europe, Africa, South America. They don't necessarily have the same resources and infrastructure, so you have to adapt practices. That's not the purpose necessarily in this project, although I think it is in the end. But it's essential if we're going to have interoperability on the scales that we need it. That leads then to the third bullet, which is having universal metadata, data management vocabularies. And I have to say that eMATnet is doing a wonderful job in that area. And we are looking to collaborate. And finally, something that's not as much discussed, but how do I know what the uncertainty in the data is? How do I know whether I can even trust it? And trust is my next word. And certainly for observations, calibration is very critical. So those are the four thoughts in relation to interoperability. The second word, as I said, is trust. And now that's not the trust of the scientist taking the measurements, doing the research. It's the trust of the people doing the policies, the decision making, and basically guiding the social community in the Blue Mission, that they understand and can trust what we're giving them in terms of data. And that's consistent processes for observations and data management. I keep emphasizing the need to manage the data well in addition to collecting it. Reliable indicators, and finally, effective communication. So I leave you with those two words, trust and interoperability. And now let's move forward with the thoughts. Well, the next question is, what is a best practice and what's a standard? And normally I start on the right side of this view graph, but I'm going to start on the left side this time. And that is, standards and best practices are an ecosystem. They are a community and they work together. So it's not one or the other. For standards, best practices are used in the implementation of standards. And for best practices, they evolve to standards eventually. So what we have are a difference in the way they're created. Is there a pointer here?
No,
Oh, okay.
sorry.
So in best practices, these are bottom up. People go out in the field, they do measurements, they learn how to take them, they communicate that to their colleagues. For standards, it's top down. An expert team comes together, they've decided what they're going to talk about. They produce a standard. They do that under the guidance of standard organizations, ISO, Global, CEN in Europe, IEEE, which is global, and OGC, which worries about the geospatial components. And those are both very, very important. And we interlink them, we move back and forth. And I think that's something to remember as we talk about best practices and standard. Now, the next question is, what is a best practice? And the problem we have with that is it's like Xerox or refrigerator. It's words that have become part of a labeling rather than actually having meaning. In fact, we use best practices because the community's used it a long time, but most of the methods that we look at are not best practices. And so we had to come to a definition of what is a good practice, a better practice, or a best practice. And a maturity model was developed over the last 4 or 5 years through Jericho as a Horizon project, and published last year, and we've done a lot for it since then, to understand what's a better practice and what's a best practice. I should say that the understanding for the repository we're talking about today is either it's a better practice, that's level 4, or a best practice level 5. And that's very, very important because those are mature practices. So let me talk about the definitions, but just very briefly. There you go. Level 3, it's formally documented, openly available, and can be replicated by an expert. So it's not necessary that it's across the community yet, but it's accessible. And that's very, very important because without the documentation, it doesn't work. The level 4 becomes the one that's very interesting because now it's used by multiple institutions. And so, in fact, it sort of has the blessing of the communities. It also means to verify the implementation. There's a checklist or something, so anybody starting out knows whether they've done it successfully. It enables trust. Level 4 had a very interesting experience. We wanted to be replicated by experts, and then people from international groups. The Whaling Commission was the first one to mention that. Pauline and I have worked together a lot on this. They said, we don't write our practices only for the expert going in the field. We write it for the policymakers so they appreciate the value of the practice, that they can trust it. And so the question of trust now enters at the level of 4, and then guidelines for evolution, et cetera. And finally on 5, it's now getting endorsement by a panel of experts. And it's adopted at least regionally, not just by a couple, 3, multiple institutions. There are many other attributes, but those are the key that we want to think about. And I'll say that the focus on level 4 and level 5 for the commission repository is a very good step because it really means we have quality practices. Okay, well, how did we manage to actually test this out? Because the maturity is it's to avoid being totally subjective. And so we interviewed, and we're up to close to 100. I think we're at about 90 now, and we'll be at 100 shortly. Very specific interviews with many of the practices that are in the repository. And I focus on level 5 here, but there's level 4 also. And the practice is endorsed. It's used at least regionally. The characteristics I just mentioned in the previous slide. Excuse me. And we put a check if they comply and X if they don't. But what we found was people saying to us, the key authors, you know, we hadn't thought about that before. And we're really interested in that as an attribute, whether it's to have the protocols for improvement or something else. And so we put an asterisk. And you can see the groups that we've interviewed. In this case, it's the U.S. University of Washington, OSPAR, ICES, the Argo Group, OOI, etc., and SHOM also, and our other teammates here. And what we have are many practices that are sitting in the range of 4, but only 5 that are best practices. They just haven't made it yet. And it has to do with endorsement. It has to do with feedback. It has to do with making it a really sustained living document. And this is sort of background for the discussions that we're going to have that Christian's going to show. All right, I need to move on quickly because we'll run out of time. This is a very nice plot that Christian did on the number of practices versus publication year. And we go back to 1983. And we never got to interview the key author. It's a little bit late in the life cycle for that. But we've had tremendous support from the community in the interviews that we've done. And most of the practices are in the last 10 years. And that there's good reason for that. And also in the right, and you won't see the details of the number, but starting at 5 on the bottom and going down to 3, what are the number of practices? And you can see most of them were 4 and 5, but there were a few that are 3s that they weren't really sustained, and those won't be in the repository. Okay, and finally, let me conclude with my section, and I'll turn it over to Christian. Standards are an issue, and the issue with standards is they generally have 2 business models, one or the other. One is that they're for sale, and they're behind a paywall, and you have to pay for it. And ISO does that, SEN does that, IEEE does that. It's very, very common. The other means of funding comes from partnerships, and then there is no paywall, and that's OGC. And I have been talking with IEEE and with SEN about bringing things out from behind the paywall so they're more accessible. And there is a history here that certain of the SEN and the CENELEC agreements do allow for being free and open without pay. You have to make special arrangements for that. And so there's a negotiation of how to reimburse them because you're really replacing their model with something else. IEEE has the GET program, which is exactly the same thing. And I put references there for those of you that have it. We haven't really addressed that. And I think one of the questions that's open is, do we put in the repository those standards that are behind the paywall where you can't actually read the standard until you buy it, so you don't know the details of it? And we need to discuss that as one of the long-term considerations. So I've gone through best practices, I've gone through standards, I've showed you what we have as the rationale for the content in the repository. And now I'd like to turn it over to Christian, who will talk a little bit about what's in the repository and sort of the mix and Christian.
Okay. So I'll give you a very brief overview on the content that we have now in the not only in the repository, because only a subset of all the analyzed content has been initially introduced, those that were complying with best practices that are complying with level 4 and 5. but we've been identifying many more practices and standards. In total, it's been a work done by the review team of about 154 methods and practices and 62 standards. And as I said, at the moment, 75 that are ranking in 4 and 5 after those interviews are currently available in the repository. Just getting back to the previous, what we have done in analyzing all this content that was based already with previous work from the previous INEOT tender, it's been a large effort on tagging all the content with against 29 authoritative lists or controlled vocabularies coming from different organizations that we see below. And we've been trying to cover not only on the observations part, but also tagging against concepts that are also right with the data management and the production of final products, but also in final applications that can have both for society or for reporting against MSFD descriptors and others. So it's been a quite substantial effort of reviewing and going document by document, diving into it and being able to tag with all these 29 reference lists, all the content. So it doesn't look like, but when our colleagues later will show the user interface, all the searchability around is based on this consistent tagging against the authoritative lists and controlled vocabularies. I need to apologize. That's a very naive mistake. I don't know. There's some years, but some of the letters are very small. So sorry about that. It's how naive. But on the left side, just starting on this overview, you can see, as Jay mentioned before, is what is the content, how old this content is, and most of it is coming from the last 10 years. Is the growth of it in the number of records and the year of publication. And what is more important, in the last decade, all the content that we have as well, most of it is being consistently maintained or updated. So most of the content that we have been analyzing has a global application, which is what we see in this plot on the right, upright. And in particular, with focus on European level, we have, a subset of them. Others are regional, which is in blue and in different regions, not only in Europe, but also US, Australia, etc. And a few of them that are claimed to be used at national levels. Most of the content we have is guidelines when it comes to best practices and manuals, which is the red and the purple in the write down for those that are online. And another gross is belonging to international standards. So all the content analyzed, when it comes to where is this happening, all these observations collected, etc., is related to the water body itself, with the dissolved content of the water body or physical environmental parameters on the water. But also there is a substantial part related to biota and in minor proportion to sediment and suspended particulate material, and a quite marginal aspect related with ocean atmosphere interactions. We've tried to keep a balance on the different disciplines, and it's what you see on the right side on the content, but clearly there is a strong dominance on marine chemistry, in physical oceanography and marine biodiversity, which is particularly the 75% of the content analyzed. And the other 25% is more related to other minority, but important aspects as well, related to fisheries and aquaculture, bathymetry and seafloor topography and anthropogenic properties. So, and of course, meteorology and atmospheric conditions as well. So when it comes to observations, instruments and platforms, which is very important, we've been, again, against all the control vocabularies. What I'm showing here is just a proportion of the 20 top elements emphasized there, but of course, there's much more tagging there. But what I can emphasize in instruments, what we see more frequency, while CTD is definitely one of the most interesting aspects because it's related to many disciplines, among other things. But we have all things like hydrophones, colorimeters, titrators, spectrophotometers, cameras, sieves and filters, plankton nets, observers, multilinear echo sounders, pelagic troll nets, sediment grabs, any kind of device covering all the disciplines that we showed. And when it comes to platforms, well, in the first top part, vessels of any kind are mainly the winners, but of course, things like moorings and autonomous underwater vehicles and fixed coastal and offshore structures are also there. It's going to be interesting in time how all these concepts might be gaining relevance in methodologies in favor of big carbon consuming vessels in the future. So, and some description about what is being covered. So we try to put a lot of emphasis in the essential ocean variables to understand the derived variables that are being collected or measured. And well, on the top winners, we have things like inorganic carbon, nutrients, fish abundance and distribution, phytoplankton biomass and diversity, sea state, marine debris, ocean sound. But then we have a huge range below. And when it comes to things related with, sorry, MSFD descriptors, well, definitely eutrophication, it's been one of the winners, but also hydrographical conditions, marine biodiversity, climate change, commercial fish and shellfish, marine litter, etc. I'm not showing here other aspects related with applications and relevant societal impact, but we've been choosing many other control lists that later you will be able to filter out through the repository and then hopefully provide feedback on which of these faceted search aspects are relevant or not for the day-by-day utility of this repository. But nonetheless, and following on Jay's comments, because the standard is an issue. So almost 75% of the content that we have been identifying and analyzing is open access, whilst practically 25% is restricted access. When I say restricted access, is basically a paywall thing, and it is only applicable for those standards. So on the right side, what you can see is a bit how the work is being done. So most of it, which is in green, or we have a strong component, which is content that is being properly maintained. And by maintain, we mention about periodical reviews, about 3 years, something like that. But you know that the community is using and sustaining that methodology itself. We have a big bunch of methodologies that are still quite recent, and recent is within the last kind of 5 years. So it's maintained or not, we will see in time. So this may vary. And then we have a big gross, or well, minority, which is all those practices that are very old from the 90s, early thousands. They are considered valued. They are not maybe properly maintained, but they are reference material for the community. And hence this needs to be kept into consideration. But again, as Jay said, sometimes it's too late to contact some of the authors, so that there is this kind of void around there. And then there is the big growth, which is all the effort that mostly part of our team and Jay and Pauline have had a lot of presence here. It's on conducting these interviews with the different authors of the methodologies to understand what is the status of this. Is it valued? Is it deprecated? Is it maintained? And this is part of what you see here in purple. Is a work in progress that is consuming, of course, a lot of energy. So more small letters, and I apologize for that again, but in publishers, we have identified a total of 210 organizations that are behind publishing all the content that we've been analyzing. There's been a kind of bias there. So for what was analyzed in the previous CINEA and what we have seen is there are strong organizations that are having a solid reputation behind all of this, and most of it belongs to ISO, ICES, HELCOM. We have been exploring documentation from NOAA, OSPAR, UNESCO, European Commission, World Meteorological Organization, British Standards Institute, Frontiers in Marine Science, IOC, UNESCO, and the International Electrochemical Commission, IEC. This is most of the growth what we have. Basically, it's ISO, ISIS, and HELCOM have, as you see, a big draws of those analyzed best practices and standards. So when close to finish, probably, yeah. When we talk about this European Commission Ocean Best Practices and Standard System, of course, there's been a lot of discussions about, okay, what is different this from OBPS, traditional, the Ocean Best Practices System at UNESCO and GOOS. And there's been a lot of discussions on that and a lot of worry in the sense that, okay, but for Europe, we need something concrete. We need to know, as Zoe was mentioned, as other colleagues have been mentioning here, we want to use exactly the best that we need for the purpose that we have. And that's where we are trying to find that balance, and what we have been emphasizing that balance. But nonetheless, all the lessons learned from OBPS have been fed into this new system, and what we expect is that in the future there might be further relations on lessons learned and knowledge transfer from one system to another. I need to run a bit probably, but the most important part in here is the scope and the application of these systems. The European Commission has been, the initial idea has been focusing on the observations practically, and whilst OBPS has been broadly focused more behind the observations towards the data management, towards the application, the modeling and forecasting. And what we are in discussion, and probably next step, is how the European Commission will be system keep restricted on the observation side, or there will be room for connecting to these other dimensions in the value chain. That's open for discussion. But when it comes to scope, primarily, of course, the OBPS is in Europe, whilst OBPS has a more global scope. And then when it comes to maturity, that's quite important. As I said, on the European level, we are focusing on those that are falling under levels 4 and 5. So there's been a lot of, as I say, lessons learned and exchange of knowledge, and that's been very patterned with the metadata profiling, the metadata schema behind. So what we have improved in this new system has been a lot inherited as well on the good and the bad from the previous system, and that's been very fruitful for us. And we look forward to keep consistency and interoperability around these metadata schemas, because this is a critical fundamental pillar if we want to keep interoperability at the end of the day. It is one of the keywords that Jay mentioned. On top of that, OBPS contrasted with the European Commission system, what can provide is some complementary services that then it could kind of release some extra work from the European Commission services there. And this is related with DOI services for persistent identifiers, especially for those, not all the pieces might be always sitting in a persistent place. Some are related to projects, although they are very valuable, but in some cases, you can find some danger of some of the practices not consistently being located in one place. And OBPS has been, during the last 8 years, consistently trying to leverage that and preserve this knowledge and applying these persistent identifiers and creating landing pages to preserve exactly this content. And that's something that the European Commission can benefit. And of course, as I said, in this exchange of knowledge, there's been a lot that we have been inheriting towards the European Commission related with possibilities and how to make this method machine readable, and that's a lot related with particular standardized templates on how to fill the content that we need to allow this machine-to-machine interoperability in a further level in the future. Not in this case now. I'm talking now about the real content of the document, and that will have many implications. For example, when we start using large language models on AI for changing the way that we search, discover, manage our documents. But that's definitely not something for now. And there's an important aspect as well related to training. Right now, there's nothing planned in the European Commission system when it comes to training and capacity development of our users on how to use the system, how to interact with the system, how to feed the system. And that's something that the new system could benefit already from OBPS with the experience it has already from in this dimension. So what's next, or how do we see the future, or what is the evolution of this system and how it will fit in the European landscape? There are certain aspects that we consider important to keep in mind. These are, again, open questions, subject to feedback, subject to discussion. But as Antonio was clearly mentioned, one of the key elements is how we are linking our methods with the data. And we have already, fortunately, good background on this through EMODnet chemistry, through EMODnet physics, that can provide examples on how the methods are being linked to the data right now, and how this system will be interacting with other key elements in the European landscape. And I would like to also mention this for this digital platform related with ship planning, all the survey plannings, how this system could be interacting with that system as well when we are planning surveys, to know exactly what methodologies are going to be used in those surveys. That would really provide a lot of added value when it comes to planning. And when we talk about planning, then we talk about cost effectiveness of things, and that will bring us to another thing about metadata. I'll talk later. But another open question is how going or not beyond the observations, because at the end of the day, ocean observing is very much connected to other key services, like can be forecasting or providing certain monitoring for advising on activities related to pollution, industrial activity, fisheries, aquaculture. So at some point, what we see in value is how the observations at the end of the day are connected to the final applications that are related ultimately with policy and decision making. And how not the open standards question that I'm not getting into again because Jay passed over this. All these elements for the future require some coordination, some governance. That's my last slide. Because, okay, we are putting the technology, we are putting the system there, but this system needs to be maintained, taken care. The best practices, the standard, it's an evolving thing. It's not static. Some things will become deprecated. Some things will be new. We will have new needs. There will be gaps. There's a lot of interesting things still to do for curating the content, the metadata. There are three main issues on top of my head, at least, that are quite critical and that we don't have capacity in this standard to attend, and they have been discussed. It's related with, for example, how much does it cost implementing certain methods in favor of other ones? Sorry. It's about the cost, it's about the uncertainty quantification, which is still a very critical aspect, but it requires a huge effort as well of understanding, diving into the into the methods, discussing with the communities, etc. So it's a big bunch. And the last one, what was the last one? Okay, it will come later. It's about fun. Yeah, it's about the metadata itself, how to keep maintaining this for the interoperability. Yeah, there was a third element. Sorry, it comes later. And then when it comes to the governance, okay, maintaining this system, who's going to manage this system, who's going to curate the content on 3-yearly basis or on regular basis, who can interact with the community, who put in place the policies to understand who can deposit or who cannot in this system, to have some certain way of control on what we have. We have all this maturity effort that, as they mentioned, it costs a lot of energy, and what we need is in the future to streamline this, to make it more systematic, so that the different providers and creators of best practices can enter into this schema in a more systematic way. And even if we can automate some of the steps, would make it much more cost efficient. And the last aspect was the training and community engagement. These governance considerations when it comes to establishing expert panels or managers of this system need to deal with interfacing with the different elements in the European landscape to really make sense of it and connect it. So I don't still remember the third element, but
come later.
Okay, it will come at some point, but probably it's time to stop because we are running late. So I'm not sure if we have time for questions now, but in the quiz that is coming later, some of these aspects are already
Yeah, but Christy, we
considered.
get some questions from the chat.
Okay.
So someone like Neil Holdsworth from ICES is referring to slide 24. You can back to
Slide 24. Neil, you can say stop.
no, you can see there.
Oh yeah, there it is. Thank you.
Yeah. So he's referring here to the last entry on MSFD. He asks, why was that separate from D11? Don't know.
Okay. Yeah. Question, Neil. So probably that might be that could be a typo. Thanks for catching that, or not. So the way that we were working with this, meanwhile the system was being developed, we had to work with the review team in parallel. So we went into a more kind of ad hoc way of working with Excel sheets online that were connected through other sheets. So we created a kind of ad hoc database model temporary. We implemented in the best way these control vocabularies as reference lists, so that not allowing us to put things manually. But after 200 and something records, some of these elements might have been misplaced there. So in the next months to come, probably what I can say is that we'll do a more thorough review on that content that has been reviewed, so that we can re-ingest it again into the system. Right now, that process is automated. So probably that's the explanation right with that. So
the second one, Neil also asks in the same slide that why are there so few contaminants practices?
In this case, I must say this is only the kind of top 20 elements that have been reviewed and analyzed. So the list is much longer, but just that if I presented all of them, that would be not readable at all. What I can say on representation of the content, which we can have here in the right side of the panel. So aspects, for example, related to anthropogenic properties are minoritary. Of course, we have a big bunch for marine chemistry. I wouldn't know how to tell you now, Neil, on concrete numbers on why some of the pollutants are not represented. Definitely, there's been a big bunch of documentation reviewed for marine chemistry related to pollutants. But if you are missing some of them, maybe you can definitely give some feedback to what, and we can review that with our colleagues that have been dealing with pollution.
Yeah, in the slide 25.
Sorry, I wasn't completely clear, but that's all right now, Neil. 25.
Yeah, 25. He didn't understand if valued is not equal as not maintained. What did to be determined mean?
Yeah, let me explain again. This is not something that we are making official. This has been something that we have been going through our review group to be able to understand what was the progress of what we were doing. It's not intended to be a authoritative list, but rather a way of kind of following the performance of what we have done. So valued in this case were those documents that are maybe from before 2000s, where it's been hard or almost impossible to contact the authors, that we know that the community still uses them as reference material for their own practices, so that they kind of, and they were identified already in the previous senior tenders. So we understood that these were important documentation to keep, even though they are not maintained.
Let me give an example of that. There's the paper on analysis of seawater, characteristics of seawater. And this was done in 2008. And we interviewed the author, and he says, I'm doing other things now. It's what it is. but everybody's using it. So we had this sort of class of it wasn't maintained necessarily anymore. It was published and not forgotten, but just not updated. And yet we had to have a class for that. And that's what, in part, what Christian's saying.
And now it came the third element, but I'll share with you later. So today, to be determined, the purple one is related with, that's mostly related with the performance on the interviews. So we had identified more than 200 sources. Right now, Jay and Pauline have done an awesome job and reached the target of 90 of them. Probably this figure is a bit outdated because there's been a quite hard work lately done. But this to be determined is exactly this. It's all that material that is still pending to have interviews to understand what's happening there. And the third element, sorry, was adoption, uptake, because in our multicultural region where we are with many different countries, an important element is to understand which country is adopting what. And that's, again, another third element together with the cost and the uncertainty determination that it will have or require specific chapters to address. Sorry, Neil, get back to you. More questions. Needed the third. Is Neil muted or?
I don't know.
Okay.
I can tell Leandro.
Yeah, it'd be good to have. Are there questions in the room?
Yeah, sorry, I've been allowed to use the microphone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Morning, Christian. Yeah, you still can't see me. My camera is still disabled. But yeah, thank you for this. I mean, this is a really important step forward. I really like it. I like that table where you explain the difference between OBPS and the EU or EC version of that. That's very useful. And I mean, generally, as you know, ICES has followed this process. We've had quite a few discussions over a period of years about the ocean's best practices, etc. My follow-up question, I still think there is something iffy there about the contaminants, by the way, because I would expect to see more because there is so much focus on that and there is so much work going on with that I think there is something strange there. But my general comment was the ICES Data and Information Group met last week, actually, and they were talking about the endorsement process for ocean best practices. And I know you touched on that in some of your slides. And one of the things that they were really emphasizing was the self-endorsement part of that is a little bit tricky, and it's a little bit like, yeah, we've already endorsed it and now we're kind of endorsing it again, which is a slightly strange. My camera's loud as well. Thank you, Leandro. There you go. Look, you can see me. Slightly strange concept, and they struggle a little bit with that, especially when we're explaining it to others that we've had an endorsement that we've self-endorsed, been endorsed. It sounds very strange to explain that to people that are not familiar with the whole concept. But one thing they would like to emphasize, and I think that speaks to most of us, that the best thing about best practices is you've got to get people using them. And I think that's part of the take-home message here is, having a repository where you're explaining these are, good practices or better practices, getting people to use them, getting people to engage with them, that's part of all of this process. And I think that's one of the most important take-homes from this. So yeah, thank you for your efforts, Christian and Jay. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Maybe Jay can address the question.
Neil is lead for the ICES data group. And so that's his background when he's talking. We've had the privilege of working with him for years now, fortunately. I want to answer his question on endorsement because it is very relevant. ICES does endorsement through their working groups. HELCOM does endorsement through their working groups. ASPAR does endorsement through their working group. IMOS does it, but they don't all have the same criteria, the exact same process that they're following. And one of the discussions we had is the word endorsement, therefore, may mean something different depending on which organization you're talking to. We felt that there should be a uniform definition of endorsement. That is, each of the organizations should follow the same process. It's a process which doesn't change very much from what they do. but it will be uniform. And Neil, that's the reason we recognize you've done endorsement. And the question was, we'd love to have you be doing self-endorsement according to what we'll call the global process, so that there's consistency, and we can have further discussions on that over the next weeks and months. Any questions here?
No.
No, here.
You have any questions here? Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, let's go on. I think we have, let's welcome also those people online who just joined during this panel. I think we have 22 people online. So welcome to all of you. And now let's see what the IT platform looks like. We already know what they have in mind, that it would have to be easily user-friendly to easily identify, access, and use these best practices and standards on ocean observation. So we will have for this presentation Antonio Navelino, who we already know, and Pablo Ruiz from CTM, telecommunications engineer with over 11 years of experience in research and innovation activities related to ICT, most often applied to underwater aquatics. He currently leads a multidisciplinary team focused on developing innovative solutions for digital transformation. Please.
Okay. We're going to present the session 2, which is about the platform. But before we start, I would like to mention to the audience that you should be along these 3 ideas, because in session 3 we are going to make some quiz in order to collect the user feedback. So it is important during this session you have in mind these 3 ideas: what works well and what could be improved about the platform, your ideas to make the platform more useful, and user needs regarding standard and best practice. So Antonio, please.
Yeah. So, okay, somehow most of this has already been touched, because we're starting from putting together a system that is presenting ocean best practice. And I went to the systems in order to see which is the definition of best practice. And then we have that the ocean best practice is defining a best practice as a methodology that has repeatedly produced superior results relative to other methodologies with the same approach. Then I also tried to see what the artificial intelligence is telling, and more or less is saying the same. So it refers to methodologies that have been demonstrated superior result in ocean research, operation, application. The practices are often standardized and whether adopted across different organizations, ensuring consistency in quality, effective data management. That is very close to the definition that eventually we came out. And of course, they can include manuals, guides, protocols, and standards. So this has already been touched. And why we need a system that is helping out to browse towards these documents. Because if you Google ocean best practice like that, then you get more than 80,000 results. If you make it a wider research that is European ocean best practice, actually I was guessing that the number was little, but instead we took about 1 million outputs. So if I need to follow best practice, which is the best practice actually, I need a system that is helping us to spot it out. So that's why it's very important, the process that we identified, because not all the practices are best practices. So we need to also to have a maturity level in order to adopt and use the ones that is already being starting considered a best practice or better practice. So that's why I'm thanking again the people that are working on that, because it wasn't amazing. Then, one thing is, it's already, so this is quite important, because we say that the best practice somehow is a digital document. It's describing procedures, methodology, but somehow we have to identify as a digital object in order to be processed by a system. So it has a file, has a format, it has a publication date, has some attributes, some metadata. I mean, Christian largely touched the problem, also define the metadata model to handle this kind of information. As we are referring to observations, we need also to think about the procedure. I mean, which kind of standard, which is the field of application of these standards. So if it is an operational procedures, if it's just speaking about data management, or setting up an equipment, or calibrating the equipment, and so on, and which are also the media, the matrix that we are observing, because this is also varying quite a lot in the system. And then this also was part of the discussion, you know, which is the authoritative body that is also endorsing or promoting that practice. So we have all this kind of information. Christian already said all messy was to start and reorganizing, I mean, putting in line all the puzzle. And we were working with more than 70 metadata fields at the beginning, and this very unreadable picture is the structure of the database that we have behind. So it's something that is very complex. And in order to manage this, okay, we said, okay, don't reinvent the wheel. Let's try and start to deploy and adapt and adopt something that is already in place. So that's why we also had a look at the digital system that was behind the Ocean Best Practice, that is based on designs, that is quite nice open source tool. That's why it's also interesting. And so we started with that. We started with that and we deployed and we customized according to the specification that we were collecting from the colleagues that were doing the analysis, and we're also setting the new definition for the metadata model management. Christian already went to this, but this is just to say that all the tables now are managed by controlled vocabulary. Most of them are managed by controlled vocabulary. Some are coming from, of course, from the community. So we are adopting many of the DataNet vocabularies. Some others are coming from ISO standards or other repository that are managing this controlled vocabulary. These are some examples. Of course, there are many more, as you can guess. And then we also somehow sit down and decided to see which could be the best workflow in order to maintain and develop the system. Of course, we have some backend system that is more related to the metadata model management, and then we have the front-end system that Pablo is going to present, that, as we said, should also match the user experience. So we need to provide an easy tool that may the user to easy find the needed application that is looking for. So we split it a bit. This, of course, they were dialoguing, and on top of that, we were also thinking how to maintain, how to implement the workflow that let us to periodically or constantly update the system. Because, of course, we were working on, let's say, on SDG development system, and then we are making it into production. And these days, we move it into production. These are also some characteristics of the system, just to give you also a flavor of the resources that we are using. And eventually, we also implemented all the system by containers, because this is also an easy way to upload the system, and we are going to spend some words on that. So the backend has to, basically, we split two workflows. One is to really manage and upload the system that is on production, and one is to deal with the new documents, or to update the content with the document that, after the reviewing activities, may be ranked 4 or 5. So the idea that we implemented is that we are collecting and scoring the data on a continuous basis, but we do the update once in a while, because then we are sure that everything is matching and is cleaned, and we also avoid some misstyle that we saw in the analysis. And the idea is to do this on a quarterly basis. So we know that we also do a sort of review of the system, and we show that everything that is already done inside is taken over and then is updated. And so if we also collect some feedback about issues with documents that may be wrongly associated to one metadata or the other, we have the opportunity to correct it and republish it after a while. And how to do that? I said we are considering, I mean, we are using this container approach, because then what we need to do is we build this system, we build this image, and then it's easy to be taken. And we know that the system that is in production is self-contained. So we know what is inside. Nobody can touch it unless we do an update and we redeploy it. And so it's very safe also for the consistency of the documents that are inside. While we keep collecting all the other data on a mirror system that is the same metadata structure and stuff like that, but is not pushing the data into the documents into the system in production until we do this cycle. What's in now? We said we around 75 best practices. These are some of the sources. I mean, it's unreadable, but it's just to give a flavor of how many they are. And in order to interact with them, we implemented these interfaces that Pablo is going to show, and maybe we are going to play together with it.
Thank you, Antonio. So here it is, the platform. And I'm going to talk about the front end from the platform. So first of all, I would like to mention we follow the Europe Web Guide for usability, accessibility, and also for look and feel. This is very important for the Commission, for sure. We take care about the cybersecurity protection. This is indeed aligned, like Antonio said, with host by Bliss with in production. For sure, we take care of personal data protection because we are including secure login via through X, which is the mechanism that European Commission has in order to do login. So this is the homepage from the platform. Yeah, the main functionality is a quick search access, which is a central search bar that allows fast discovery of the items in the database. We have in the left side a sidebar with a kind of different filters, which will make probably customize regarding the feedback from the Commission and the user. But in any case, we until now put, for example, author, publication date, parameter, disciplines, regions, and so many more. Yeah, it's worth to mention that we afford the multilingual support. Yeah, right in the top. Yeah, in order to be accessible for the different regions in the European Commission. So this is the main functionality: search, filters, and for sure list of the detailed items. This second view is the detailed view for each item. So here we can see the detailed view of each document includes abstract, citation, author, license, almost all metadata in the database. You could look here. Yeah, also this metadata could be customizable. We have in this detailed view some metadata with link fields in order to easily navigate through the database. And yeah, this preserves the scientific context. So this is more or less how looks the detailed view. Then we have another functionality, which is a dashboard of metrics. Christian is talking a lot about these metrics. So I'm not expert and so on, but yeah, in the platform you can navigate and see different graphs and different information in order to know better about the metadata. Of course, when the platform has fulfilled with more items, yeah, these graphs are updated. So finally, the last functionality is the submission form. It's important to mention that user who wish to submit a document, not directly, but for evaluation. Okay, this is Antonio mentioned. So through logging from ECAS, and then we have divided the submission form in 4 sections: basic metadata, descriptive metadata, scientific and thematic metadata, and policy and contextual metadata. So this is more or less the main functionalities of the platform. But I think the idea is that we are going to do a demo. So I am Diana Zamora. Okay, I'm from UK. Sorry, I'm from Spanish, but I live in UK. So I'm expert developing and deploying advanced oceanographic instruments. Okay, so what are we looking? What are I looking for? I looking for a trust standard or perhaps best practice to support my work. So I can go through the platform. Pilar, please.
Let me first share the screen with online.
Okay, this is the platform which is online. Yet.
Yeah.
Okay, so I go through the search bar. I put oceanographic instrument, then click search, and I see a list of documents that could be interesting. But yeah, because I'm expert in instrument type and so on, I would like to filter by instrument type. And in this moment, I am working about colorimeters. I don't know.
Yes.
I click colorimeters, and then the filter is working. But because I live in UK, I'm interested about some work about colorimeter, but in North Sea. So I can go through the sea region, click North Sea, and then they are only one. They are only one.
But I know.
So with this filter, they are only one match. So, but probably it's interesting for me, which is chemical aspect of ocean acidification monitoring in the ICES marine area. And here you can see the detailed view of this document. So you can see the abstract, the authors, the publication date, the special coverage, and so many more. If Pilar, please go down. Yeah, there are a lot of information about this item. And then finally, probably I as I don't know the name of the I mean I am an expert.
Yeah.
Would like to open the file to access to the file and then study or I don't know. So this is the item that I. So this is more or less one user using the platform for the main functionality. The other user, the other use case could be the institutional perspective. In this case, I am Iwan Owak, a user from the European Commission that are exploring statistics and across the database. So this is clear. I can go through the platform again. And then in this case, I can go to this section. Yeah, sorry, because
No, it changes.
the language is always in Spanish because the navigator is in Spanish. So, but okay, if you have your computer in English, everything is in English. So in this section, you can see these graphs that Christian presented before, which, for example, temporal coverage, spatial coverage, disciplines. For example, Pilar, please. For example, marine chemistry is 26 items, or instrument and platforms, the top 20 instruments and platform, which is CDD is the most instrument used in those platforms. So in the platform, there are a lot of metrics and in order to explore the database. So the third user could be Mr. Anna Johansen, which is a data officer. She pursued a master's degree in data science and marine biology. Yeah, she wants to contribute a document to the platform, submitting it for evaluation. Example. So this kind of user could go through this platform, which is separate functionality, which login from ECA is only for test. Okay, and then login. Okay, and then she can go through the new item and then select the collection, which by default is this collection. So she can find here 4 sections about basically.
No, sí, I think that's better.
Okay, so 4 sections. The section 1 is about basic metadata, which is license type, document type, method type, language, and so on. Section 2 is the main section, which for the detailed metadata, like author, title, the version or titles, date of issue, publication place, and so on. Then the section 3 is for scientific data, mostly. Please go down to the section 3. Yeah, there is it. Abstract, then Pilar, please. The maturity level, which Jay mentioned, which is very important, endorsement also. And then in section 4, we have some metadata like the platform and instrument, but also essential variables, sustainable development goals, MSFP, this kind of stuff. So finally, the user need to upload go down. Finally, only need to upload the document and then submit. So this is the third use thing in the platform with the 3 different users. So go back to the presentation, please.
Yes.
Okay. So summarizing, I present a user-friendly interface with the capability of document discovery, of course, detailed view of each record, one functionality to explore the database, which is a dashboard of metrics, and finally, a little bit separate submission workflow to upload documents to be evaluated. Okay, this is more or less the front end and the until now. So thank you for the attention.
And one last very important thing that we touched about, it's good to say again. Both the submission form and the idea of use the containers are designed in order to really host the document, electronic copy, the digital copy of the document, because then we are sure that the user can find the document, as Pablo presented. Because sometimes you also see with other system that when you look for one specific document, then you have URL and that is broken, so it may not be really efficient in the way you're searching for this documentation. And the system that we designed, it's again, it's proofing. I mean, it's safe in this time because we can only accept documents that as a digital copy, and they are deposited inside the system that they are deployed.
Okay.
Yes. One of the
It's also one of the inclusion criteria for the documentation, because if we cannot have access to the digital copy, as we say, the documents that are behind a paywall at the moment are not considered in the system, because that we need to provide the access to the full document that we are including in the system.
Antonio Pablo, there is a question from the chat.
Yeah.
Patricia Cabrera from EOC UNESCO asks, for documents that are already published in OBPS, will they be republished in your repository?
The ones that match the scores, they will be republished, but of course one of the metadata is DOI, so they are also linked to the original source. As we say, for safety, for ensuring that the document is always available, we need to have a copy in the system. But that is a copy, it's very well declared in the metadata.
Okay, so Neil again, back to MSFD contaminants, and he asks, there is an underrepresentation for sure, and I think he's referring to.
Well, I can actually speak. So maybe I'll just say it. So yeah, I was following up on that question I had in the content for Christian and Jay earlier, and I can see that when you do a search for MSFD contaminants, you get 3 results, and you come to an ICIS publication, which is the only one in the Baltic Sea, but you don't find any of the HELCOM technical annexes, which is part of their combined manual, which is what I was referring to up in the chat. And then I thought, well, okay, maybe that's because you don't, it's a matter of granularity that maybe you've just got the whole combined manual. But then when I look at eutrophication, you do have all of those technical annexes. So the question I had is a 2-part question. First part, was extra documents added, or have you just taken what was already existing in OBPS and worked from that? So that was the first part of the question. And then the second question, which is slightly unrelated to that, but it was more about the labeling. So all of this, I think the technical interface, Antonio, is very nice. It's a very good job. Thank you. It looks really good and it works. I've just been testing it. But the question was, in terms of the labeling, that's the tricky part. Where do these labels come from? Who actually puts them on there? Like, for example, when you say MSFD, who has actually decided these are MSFD related or not? That was my second question.
I answered the second one, and then I pass Jay for the first one. The second one is coming from the exercise that Christian presented. So the labeling has been done by the expert group that were reviewing the document. So we are taking from that. If you want to add anything.
When you finish, yeah.
Okay. And no, but that was the things. And of course, they are. We are here to present it, to collect feedback, because it's part of the job that we need to do, also to review some of the labeling, also some of the filtering of say tags that you can play, or the headings that we would like to have in the system in order to facilitate the search. So this is part of the feedback that we would like to collect after this workshop. So any feedback, Neil, is very welcome. I don't know, Christian, Jay, for the, yes.
If I may, just regarding question 2 from Neil, I think you tackled a really important question here, and just adding on Antonio's, this is related with the need for sustainability of this and the further curation of the content, and why we need a proper expert panel, if I may say, or at least as we see it from the technical team in this standard, the need for a proper panel to continue this work, to make per gap analysis on what is there, to review what is there, to interface with the different communities, to decide exactly, as you said, when exactly that best practices is linked to the descriptor number 3 or not. Because we understand that all the tagging effort, although we've done with the best available knowledge and with the best available scope of disciplines that we were analyzing. Of course, it's been done in a short amount of time and with available resources. So we understand it's not perfect, and definitely it needs further curation. That's why we emphasize the aspect of the governance for sustainability of this system.
Okay, I want to answer Neil, but Pablo, I want to come to you first. When the person goes through submission in the submission form, do they indicate it's relevant to MSFD?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's really, there's a self-assessment on part of the author and a validation on part of the expert panel. And although we haven't done that in the formal sense yet, that has to be part of the process. As far as the pollution, and you mentioned HELCOM, Neil, we have a meeting with HELCOM scheduled for next week. We wanted to do it before this meeting to validate all of the pollution and other things, but the group was busy. So there is a collection of HELCOM and others that will be addressed shortly that may come back to what you're asking. But if you see something missing, we ask that people working with the system give us their code gaps, and then we'll work the gaps.
If I may add on that, Neil, he was actually a partner in the first tender, and these standards and best practices actually were mainly focusing on essential ocean variables. So you're right, Neil. I mean, there are missing documents. However, maybe they are not also directly related to the well-described essential ocean variables. So maybe that's why they are missing. So here also we have to reflect a little bit on the gaps that are found also in the description of EOVs. And also in this standards, we have also focused on EOVs as well. So in the proper description of EOVs. So this is something that wasn't also so clear.
Yeah, I'm going to just comment quickly on that because I think marine pollutants are part of the EOVs, correct? Yes, contaminants, hazardous substances, whatever you want to call them, they're part of EOVs. So I think it's just as Jay says, you've just got missing content that you need to do some homework to catch up and find out where all these bits and pieces are.
Just a quick reminder for Neil is that there are only 75 records at the moment in the ECOBPS out of 100 and whatever, i.e. they're only half the number of records that we will eventually have as our first input. And I think you will find that marine litter and pollutants and those sorts of things, and as Jay said, the HELCOM ones will be added, but at the moment we're only halfway through actually ingesting the records. So you will see an improvement.
And this also, I mean, leads to another question that we need to discuss with Commission as well, is who is going to submit, who will be enabled to submit new documents, because at the moment we identified the, let's say, the workflow, but we still have to discuss who can really submit, because if each and everybody may submit things, could be not that efficient. Maybe we need to streamline somehow the procedure via some of the authoritative entities that were mentioned. So, for example, it could be nice that when OSCAR, HELCOM, ICES are approving new documentation, they would like to have this document in this system, and so they are the entity or someone that on behalf of them push this document into the system. And so that will streamline also the process. That is something that we need to discuss.
So you're going to give specific sort of access for images that have the capacity without extra peer review. This would imply that OSCAR and HELCOM, for instance, would have advanced access to the system compared to others.
That could be done. At least, I mean, if at the moment we just implemented the workflow, of course, I mean, the rights on the system should be discussed. It's also part of the topic of the finalization of the system.
So, hello again. You guys out. So we are going to start with the session 3. It is a quiz to collect user feedback from you, from the audience here, from the present audience here, and also for the audience online. Okay, so we need this moment that you pick up your mobile phone, because the feedback is with the mobile phone. So Pilar, please.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, 1 second. I want to share with people online.
Okay, we are using a platform. This is interactive platform. Yeah, it's quite cool. Let's go. So, how it works? I read the question. It's important that you understand the question, and then Pilar click here, and then the time start. So you have 30 seconds to start. This first question is very easy. It's only yes or no. So I think 30 seconds. I think 30 seconds is enough. So first question: have you used a similar platform before? So yes or no, Pilar, please. Okay, in your mobile phone, no pressure. Okay.
I said yes.
This one.
You say
You can go.
Google Network one. I don't know.
If you are wrong or something like that, you can change your answer. Okay, so 5 seconds. So, okay, we have 25 people here, and 63% are using this kind of platform. I suppose that OEPS could be the platform used, but there are 36% that.
What do you mean by similar? Because if you are asking if we are used to use a platform where we are depositing some documents, maybe yes.
Yeah.
No.
But if you want to know if we are used to use a best practice platform, it may be no.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Sorry for the misunderstanding, but yeah, I mean a platform who has some kind of best standard or practices or this kind of stuff.
Then many would answer no.
Yeah.
It wasn't clear.
Yeah.
But for me, for example, I put it based on the filtering options and this stuff. So yeah, I mean, there are similar platforms,
Yeah,
but not for the same objective.
I understand, but it's not my intention. My intention is platform like OPS or something.
You have to calibrate.
Okay, in any case, this is the feedback. So the second one, yeah, these three questions, I mean, the second, the third, and the fourth are from more or less from Jay. Is for the use and needs for this best standard practice. It's not related exactly with the platform. Do you use a standard in your observation or data management work?
Just a follow-up. You mean here only standards, no best practices?
I think
The next one.
probably in next one is about
Only
best
standards.
standards. Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. Only standard. Yes. Yes.
No, no. Yes. No, the answer is yes. Because we certainly use it in that process, right?
Yes. 5 no. 10 seconds left. A little bit confusing about the people into the platform because
Yeah.
but okay. Time's up. So yeah, in this case, 13 people use standard. Like I suppose like for example, calibration standard and so on. Because in CDM, for example, we use calibration standard for work. And but okay. So next one is about best practices. In this case, Abed, yes. Do you use document methods best practice in your work? Yeah, this is not public, but I would like to know who is. Okay. So, but in any case, yeah, the most of the audience use this best practice. So
Next one.
next one. Yeah, this is a interesting question from Jay. And yeah, it says, what do you usually look for when searching for methods? This question, I think, is for free text, if I am not wrong.
I don't know, let's see.
Okay. Okay.
Vote.
Okay. Sorry, because okay.
Do we know which are something?
I'm not sure.
It's not yet open. You don't have it all.
Refresh.
I'm not sure. Okay.
Something.
Take a look.
Oh, we know.
Okay. Titles out there, but I can see
Up here.
I can see.
I cannot,
Can you reopen it?
yeah, it seems it's closed.
Yeah, okay. Please, Pilar.
Again,
Now it-
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
Legend.
I can see the vocabulary.
So it seems subject keywords are the most important.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Set the keywords.
All of
This
the instruments.
okay. Instrument and platform, which is
Right.
important method. Yeah. So yeah, subject. I mean, okay. Subject keyword is the main principal, and then instrument and platform, and then
Title.
the rest title, authors, and so on. So yeah, the next one, I think, yeah, this is this question about yeah, the UX and UI platform. Yeah, this is very clear. Which part of the platform did you find most useful? So search and filter, detail view, metrics, mission form. Which one do you fine.
Just one.
Yeah,
We get multiple.
yeah. I think that's one. This the most important for you.
When we don't know, there is.
You don't need to answer mandatory. So it's more or less it's clear that yeah, the main functionality of the platform, search and filters, will be the most interesting for the audience. But also the metrics is more or less important, which is for me is little surprise. I have to do, but okay, this is the result. So next one. Yeah. Which part of the platform will you improve? Yeah, I know that you have not tested the platform by himself, but yeah, you have seen my presentation more or less. You can imagine which part of the platform will you improve. Okay, this is interesting. The most favorite functionality is also the functionality that perhaps needs some review. and also the del view. So it's the del view and okay, metrics. I think we have work to do in order to improve every section. Yeah, metrics, the del view and search filter are the section that need to be I mean reviews. So next one, Pilar. This is not mandatory for sure, but in relating to the previous question, what specific improvement would you suggest? In a few words, it's not for write so much more, but the idea in 2, 3, 4 words. Okay, the first one, open PDF in new window. This should be addressed easily. Increase availability. Sorry, the content. The content. Yeah, could we can customize the content of the detail view and so on. There's no problem. I mean, maturity level height in page. Okay. Speed on response. Choose criteria for submission. Detail view lacks some contents. Yeah, sure. Use the metrics to filters. It could be interesting and think about that. I yeah, there are a lot of this question is interesting because there are a lot feedback, interesting feedback. Periodical report on progress, bottom-up approach, community feedback, reduce amount of displays on record. Okay, Pilar, please. Stop. Thank you. Yeah, these results are safe in this platform. So this we need to share with the consortium and address if they are interesting. So yeah, please. This is one that I don't mention because I don't remember during my presentation, but is which sorting options would you like to see for search results? In this moment, if Pilar, please click in show image. In this moment, we are using by default the most relevant, the title, the date, and the accessioning date in order to sort the list of documents in the search in the homepage. I mean, so you can choose one of them or select another kind of options to sort. Yeah, hide please, and then hide. Yeah. So most download, maturity level, which could be interesting. Most popular, and is more or less the same that I don't remember the name, but date issue descending, update date, most relevant, maturity level.
They're asking what does the actionate date? They're asking what does actionate date mean?
Is the date that the item has been accessed by anyone. Please go back. So maturity level, author descending is bit when it will be updated again. Okay. Number of downloads, Hyperfield views. Okay, so many ideas. So which is interesting, but I think the 30-second is finished. Perhaps maturity level is the one that there. Okay. And last one, I think. Yeah, this is the last one question. And this is private question, but we would like to know if the audience online or here could participate like beta testing in the several months. Yeah, this is not mandatory for sure. And would you like, the question is, would you like to join the beta testing group and help improve the platform? Yeah, only for we to know. Yeah, this is the no, it's only private in order to see, because yeah, after that we have the email and the person, and we can contact and see if they can.
Besides the people that are participating to the development.
Yeah, of course.
They have to.
So this session more or less end here. After, for sure, after this workshop, we are planning to put this system on production with Bliss. I don't know, Antonio, if you have in mind when or more or less, but in a few weeks, months, the platform will be online in order to be tested by, of course, the CINEA, European Commission, and from anyone that could help us.
Actually, I mean, at the moment, we already have this prototype available because it's published enough. So we need to decide that this is something that we need to discuss when we move it to Blitz, because that is already working, I mean, with the feature that we presented today. And then, of course,
you think it's mature already for publishing?
Yes, it is. At least the searching, I mean, the interaction with the document that are already filled in the system, it's already there. It's working, and it's, of course, I mean, we need to complete with some new documents that are under, but that is also part of the maintenance that we are planning.
Maybe the invitation to a beta, to participate to a beta phase could be open.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the
Yeah.
link is online.
Publish
Right
in
now.
1 month or whatever period of time for everybody to go and test.
And then when we close it, we collect the feedback. We see if we need to do any major fix, and then we move to production. And so we have a stable.
Yeah, right now we name the system in pre-production, which is always online. It's not the final one.
No, but if there's possibility to give feedback as well.
Yes, yes.
So it's
Maybe
valuable.
one thing that we need to add on this pre-production system is a feedback form. So we can collect also some feedbacks on that. That is something that we didn't think, and it's useful.
Yeah,
And then we
have to review the metadata, the curate the good. I mean, there's some error, not is not in English. Yeah, we need to check sometimes. Okay, so I don't know if you have questions about this user feedback. Yes.
Yeah, one thing that you didn't mention is if I start a submission, is it saved for me so I don't have to restart it if I have to go away from the site?
Okay. Yes, it's the same. You are not the problem.
So it is stored?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yes, you can go and then the answer is stored. Safe. So yeah, I think we can move through the session 4, which is, I think, the most important or the most interesting session for today. I think, but thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Pablo. Let's go now for the last session, the roundtable with you experts to analyze the future of the European standards and best practices and also observation. We need only 1 minute.
Yeah.
For that, no. There you go. You can speak.
Andrea. Andrea.
Okay.
¿Cómo te puedo llamar?
Three here and 4 here. We have already done.
Okay.
The camera. Yes. More or less. Yes.
Third one here.
One. Okay. Aquí David, otras dos. Two there, and that's it.
No, I need to go to Mendoza.
What's yours? The European Marine Biological Research Center, with a strong academic expertise in marine microbial ecology and bioinformatics. She holds a PhD in marine sciences from Ghent University and the University of Bremen, preceded by a Master in Environmental Biology from the University of Crete, Bachelor of Science in Biology from the University of And last, Abed El-Rahman Hassoun, Geomar. He holds a PhD in oceanology and is an expert in marine biogeochemistry with a strong focus on the ocean carbon cycle and climate change impacts on marine ecosystems. He's the founder and chair of the Ocean Acidification Mediterranean Hub, which is part of the Global Ocean Acidification Observing Network. And then, since I didn't have you,
All right, I'll do it myself.
please do so. It will be much better.
Okay, hi, nice to meet you. Antonio Guarnieri. I'm from Dicimare, Unit A1, which is Marine Knowledge and Innovation. Recently founded in last September. I have a degree, master's degree in environmental engineering, and then I have a PhD in oceanography. Mainly in operational oceanography, where I have worked for 20 years in the research in Italy. And then I've moved to consultancy and private sector, still in marine and maritime engineering. And then I joined stations. So I have a scientific background.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And I
Not expert
appreciate
in
it.
best practices, though, in ocean observations, to be honest. And I am a bit. I'm very happy to be here with so many experts.
So please, the round table is for you.
Okay. So I'm going to chair a bit of the round table. So I'm going to address you some questions that we can discuss together. But before that, we do another exercise together. So I ask you guys, actually the people that are listening and the people that are online, to scan the QR code, and you're going to be asked the question that you have in the slide. Because then, after this first round of questions, we can comment together also the feedback from the attenders. So you have time to do that, and then we can start with some question. I also put it here, so it's easier also for the people that are following. Maybe just 1 second. Yeah. You can do that. So we are also showing the question that we are addressing, so it will be easier also to go on there, and also for the people that are following remotely to be seen. Okay, so the first question, we are discussing about development of standards. So the first question that I would like to ask is, which is your role in the development of marine data standards, and how do you ensure their relevance and applicability for stakeholders? And of course, I mean, this question is for Adeline, because you are, from SHOM, so you're doing this job on a daily basis also for other entities in France, but not only in France. So I would like to start with you with a comment with this, and then I would like to ask Peter, because you are Maris, you are involved in CDataNet for a long time, so you're dealing with standard, you're dealing with the community, so this is also very targeted. First, Adeline.
Well, thank you very much, Antonio. I will reply on the behalf of SHOM, because I'm not the most involved in the development of marine data standards at the moment. But SHOM is really much involved in data standards for so we are responsible of some descriptor in the maritime in the MMSFD, so maritime
strategy framework directive.
The 1137 being the hydrological descriptor, as well as the underwater noise for D11, and on those we are we are participating in some of the technical groups, so TG Noise, for example, trying to set standards and also thresholds of what is for good environmental status, and what is above and what is below. We are also at SHOM part of the IHO, which is the International Hydrographic Organization. And SHOM is having the role of a co-chair of the HITCH, which is the Hydrological Standard Subcommittee. So we are also participating in those standards. And of course, marine data standards is very much important for in ocean observation, is very important for our work, because after that we are collecting data, but we are also processing data. We are making services either for safety of navigation or for a lot of description of the physical environment. So this is very, very important for us. And we are also working on some standards for calibration of the instruments and tools, because we think it's very important to set the basis of calibration of the sensors in order to be able to compare the results that we gain from the ocean observation. I'm not going to go too long on the panel, but maybe in terms of applicability for stakeholders, it is often easy to think of us as experts being able to read through those standards that we've been reviewing. They are a bit complicated, but we have the knowledge and expertise. What I see as a gap is when we try to focus on the crowdsourced bathymetry, for example, or any other type of activity, we provide the same standards as they are for experts to the citizen. And I think we need to maybe link or provide more inputs on how to apply those standards to this crowdsourced bathymetry or crowdsourced ocean observation, whichever it is, in order to be able to have this trust and confidence in the citizen science collection.
Very good. So this is also somehow linked to some of the presentation that we did, because we have to have also an eye on the kind of stakeholders. So we need to also, from the platform point of view, we need to think about having different personas that are interacting. And so we have also to think about somehow facilitating this workflow to reach out the proper standard in order to be able to consume it and to adopt it. Peter, as we said, standards. You're living in standards.
Well, on the data management.
Yes.
We are very active in the marine data management domain from the side of CDataNet, which is working on data exchange standards long before the term FAIR was already introduced and known. We're doing that in underpinning with these standards, EMODnet, cloud for open science. And what is the strength in the approach there is that we have, and then it's not ours, it's the total network of marine data managers together looking to the data that comes into their institutes that are collecting the data, the researchers that are collecting the data, observation stations, what is needed there. And they have the connection to the scientists or the end users that are wanting to use the data and what do they need in their metadata to reuse the data. And then we come into the FAIR to make the data findable and accessible, but especially interoperable and reusable. And for interoperability and reusability, there you come to the point of using standards, standard way of documenting your metadata, what you put into the metadata, using internationally agreed vocabularies, for example. But also in the reusability, you need to ideally also put in best practices on how you collect the data. And otherwise you don't know. Now it's mostly for humans, but we need to look more and more to the machine accessibility. And we already mentioned AI. We can feed AI with all kinds of nonsense, and then we get, if it can't estimate the quality of the data, we don't know. So that is the next step, to machine accessibility of the metadata, of the data, and then of the, are our linkages in the metadata, like to best practices or to a vocabulary or to any kind of information, are these also machine-to-machine accessible, right, to the quality of the data estimated? So we ensure the relevance by looking constantly at what is the reuse of it, and we work together with the scientists as well as the data managers.
So here again, we also are highlighting the fact that it's quite important to have all the stakeholders sitting together in order to discuss about what is needed and how to improve the models and
constantly keep iterating.
Yes.
There's a lot going on. It's EMODnet, Edito, as well as the Open Science Cloud. And in the end, we have the same stakeholders at the top, so we need to converge there, and it all comes down to the same thing. Make sure that the data from the research and observation.
Yes, please. Sorry.
The connections between the different initiatives should also be seamless. So we are separating the initiatives because, of course, there are different goals and different objectives between them. But our aim should be that the connection should be invisible to our users. The user shouldn't have to decipher what the one does and what the other does. It should be easy to navigate and take what you need from where you need it without having to trouble your mind with what the one initiative does and what the other does.
That is, yes, the elevation of the concept of fairness and interoperability in the end.
Agreed.
Good. We start from the definition, and of course we go to the adaptation and implementation. So what are the main challenges when implementing interoperable ocean observation system in the field, and which are the key factors to facilitate data sharing via European platforms? These are two questions that I would like to ask Christian and Peter again, because somehow the first one was also touched somehow by your presentation, because you were looking at the let's say, variety of the information that we have. And again, with the experience that you already mentioned, Peter, we know that we are always on a daily basis facing some barriers in the adoption of things. And so we want to, I'd like to ask you to comment a bit more also on this kind of mental barrier, say, rather than technical barriers, also technical barriers. So Christian, first you.
Well, definitely regarding the first question, probably ultimately the two main challenges are about sustainability and funding in one side, which drives us to find more cost-effective technologies and methodologies to be able to provide an increasing amount of value or data out, because we are getting much more data, but we need to head up with the pace of delivering on the other side timely the results, and this way of when we are many countries, in particular in the domain in Europe, when we are many regions, many countries, many cultures, different ocean basins with different exclusive things that are happening, this jumps to the aspect of the coordination and coherence, coherence in the observations, in the way we collect them, in the way we analyze them, and then ultimately brings us to the solution that we are trying to implement here, or the instrument that the European Commission is trying to leverage now with the European Commission for some best practices and standard system to put precisely an instrument to support the sustainability of the long-term consistency of these ocean observing systems. So methodology and standards, of course, are the key pillar here. So for interoperability, it goes down again to the same, which is what brings us together.
Yes, and the second one is about how can we facilitate also the sharing here.
Well, and probably Peter has been already responding to these questions, is that the machine-to-machine interoperability here is key, and using other ways to approach the organization of the information, and then leveraging vocabularies and semantic models behind it is definitely a key aspect, because here, when we talk about data sharing, at least when it comes to methodologies, we are talking about the content side. So, and for that, we've been doing for a long time efforts, and that's why initiatives like CDataNet or the vocabulary service from the ODC are investing a lot of time and effort on creating ontologies and semantic models that can make this interoperability real. So this should definitely continue and invest more, as I say.
Can I comment something?
Yes, of course.
Because ZMBRC, we're also involved in the BPO Bioflow project, which is basically trying to enhance data flow, biodiversity data flows into the editor. And one of the things we're doing is to try to connect, let's say, all the dots between repositories, integrators, and feed data into this like ecosystem that the European Commission is building. So I think if we identify the links correctly and we try to build, the bridges between the different this is what we try to do, but the bridges between the different repositories and integrators, we have a perfect way of sharing our data, according to what the Commission also wants and needs. Yeah, and this platform is also a step towards that sense, not on the data, on the actual data, but on the data collection part. So it's like the step before, let's say.
Yes, please.
One of the things that we haven't necessarily talked about, but is a main challenge, is training and education, because you can put a method out there, but unless you help people understand it and how to use it so they're using it in the same way as others, you really won't have the effective interoperability that you're looking for.
Mm-hmm. Peter, please.
Yeah, I want to focus on two sides. Key factors for facilitating the data sharing. First of all, is we need to focus on providing the right data to the right user, because we do not understand all. When we speak about data, some people speak about the raw data. Scientists often want to know the raw data because they want to do the science and look into the nitty-gritty details and what is different. And while others want to have decision support data, which is often the data product, validated much higher in the chain. It's already being analyzed before by the scientists. And, they've been studying how to use script, how to use additional quality control, and that is offered to the end users, to industry, to policymakers in certain way, in certain interfaces. So that is already two sides. You've data access services really going to the raw data access services to the data products, and really end products for users. So those is, therefore you see also sometimes a bit diversity in the field, which could be confusing, but it's really different services to different types of data. We understand it. Then the other key factor is at the bottom. We can demand everything to be standardized or metadata according to the best practices, but it all starts at in the countries at the researcher side, and they often have their national standards first, or organizational standards. So it's important to keep working together and reiterating what is requested at the bottom when this data is reused, so that the mappings from the national standards to the international ones, that they keep being done. And if there's an additional need, that this needs to be added. Otherwise you have nothing to share. So just not to make the story too long, but those two factors are really key. Make the data share.
And this is very linked to these two questions. So which are the main barriers that are limiting the adoption of standards at European level? You already touched that. And also, which are the stakeholders and how collaboration can play a role in advancing the standards? And I want to ask Abid and Jay these two questions. And Christine.
So the main barriers for the adoption of marine data standards in Europe and elsewhere is mainly related to the payment. So as long as they are not free and easy to get and to read and to check by different observers and EU institutes, etc. Lots of people, colleagues will not adopt any standards. That's why they prefer to use accessible best practices, whether they are best or good or whatever. So other accessible documents that could be easy to use, free, and you know the authors, so you can also contact them directly in order to verify about the methodology, the precision, etc. And talking about the precision, it's very, very important also regarding the previous question. The interoperability. These different European ocean observing systems should sit together also, the different representatives, and agree on certain type of precision, uncertainty that is acceptable, etc. So these could be also interoperable. Which are the stakeholders and how collaboration can play a role in addressing standards? Stakeholders, they are the same as for the best practices. Ocean observers and the ones who are using the data products from EMODNet and all the metrics that are available in the market, etc. Aquaculture facilities owners, etc., etc. But the first challenge is to really see how we can have an agreement with ISO or the European standardization entity in order to make them accessible, the standards. Otherwise, they are like very golden products that are online. We recommend them, but they are not used. And then the community will be creating more and more best practices that are easy to use and to read, and they will choose the best for them based on their capacities to see what they will adopt. So this is a very important thing too.
Really, can you also Antonio, if you want to go first.
Yeah, just a couple of comments. I think there's also a general lack of literacy and of outreach as well. For example, many people, or no, I come from the research, but in the research, for example, you deal with data every day, but not very many researchers think about what's the traceability of the standard. Is it trustworthy? And this is a lack of literacy, and I think and outreach. So it's I would say also a lack of culture of data standards that we should feed much more. Just a comment.
So I was actually going to make that comment and agree with you, but let me expand on it just a little bit. Standards are created not out of just air, but there's expert teams that get together, there's standards working groups, and they understand why the standard was created and in theory how it should be used. And I think having them play a role in the advocacy, explaining why it was created, what benefits it has, etc., and that could be through YouTube even, or it could be through other means, is really the education process is very, very important.
Exactly.
Standards literacy, we need.
Standards, actually, I like your word. The second one I'd like to talk about is that when we talk, we mention standards. I'd like to move beyond research to the blue economy. When we work with aquaculture, it's a very competitive field, and somebody's best practices are like, they keep them in. But when they get together and they form a standard, and that standard is mandated, as it would be with SEN or others, you have a very different philosophy from the people actually working in the applications field. I think we need to look at that and see how we want to deal with taking standards and making them basically a core foundation that people need to use.
I'm from Dubai. Yeah.
In this process, you would probably try to do it as smoothly as possible, because mandating things may also have, negative effect from, relative stakeholders, and you might backfire, let's say. But I would agree with whatever has been mentioned so far. Also, there is the literacy in the standards is quite important, because some people don't even know that the standards exist, let alone access them. And yes, we get to use better and best practices that are quite often quite similar to the standards, but not exactly the same material. But it's because of accessing. I think it's the accessing mainly for those that don't have it. And for the collaboration between the stakeholders, I think I have been involved in many projects throughout the years, but I think we still lack the connection, the true connection between stakeholders on different levels and research community and the Commission in general. I think there are still some gaps. We might think we have an understanding of what they want. We might think we have an understanding of how to collaborate better, but it's not 100% the case. That's my perception, at least. I think we need to, in the various projects that involve stakeholders, I think we need to involve them pretty much from the beginning, not at some level further ahead, because then things are too advanced to change, or there are just small things that we can change here and there. But I think from the beginning, or even from the design steps, and this, I think, can take us a step further.
Yes, please.
I would like to then add to that the way the maturity model is working, because standards really bring together expert groups, and then those expert groups do the debates, they bring it out to the community, et cetera, et cetera. But when we built the best practice definition, we have expert group reviews, we have training involved, we have uncertainty involved. And so what we've tried to do is take a mature, true best practice, and it's almost equivalent to standards without having to be top down. And we should begin looking at merging. When do we take a best practice, make it into a standard as part of a commitment to the community?
Yeah, exactly.
And this goes to fostering best practice. Have you seen it? We have a storyline. Which step to promote a coordinated approach? Somehow we already touched it, but I would like to ask Antonio this time a comment on this. Yes, because this is also important, perspective from the Commission point of view, and then we go to the next one.
As you know, the Commission has been doing a lot for the improvement mainly the coordination of marine knowledge and being ocean observation as the foundation of marine knowledge. So we are trying to coordinate the efforts, which are very many and many times siloed, and they should be all coordinated together. So one of this is the Ocean Observation Initiative, our big effort right now in this. I believe that this anyway cannot go further unless we have coordination and coordination with member states. Member states have the remit of observing, so member states, they have to be involved in this, which has then to have a sort of higher level. And the project we've seen today, so to see what might be a good framework for the continuation of this, is a very valuable project. Of course, the good thing is it's trying not to reinvent the wheel, but it's trying to put things together, to integrate things, not competing with other projects. But this is a project. So what we think it should be probably in the future, that this work, the platform should be retained by some wider framework, which indeed might be the Ocean Observation Initiative. So as for further steps, we don't have to forget that we will be seeing an ocean impact coming. So we will have to reason what will happen with that, how it will be adopted, what level of depth that we have about ocean observation. But for sure, I would say that coordination with member state involvement is key here. Also to give to all this work a further life, and because we do not want to keep on creating satellites that then eventually might end nowhere or might be forgotten. So either we do so, or I think that the alternative is oblivion, pretty much. And we've seen many repositories of many kinds. And if we don't find a structured framework, a structured initiative that can give them long-term sustainability.
Yes, of course. And yeah, this is somehow already has been touched, but I would like to ask Adeline, Christina, Christian, which step to foster best practices and interoperability across different regions and countries, because as you mentioned, you're dealing with this problem on a daily basis. Somehow, Antonio already dropped it a bit to the context. We need to involve member state, but of course, then we also have regional needs and so on. So please, one comment on that.
I would just mention that, of course, we need to involve member states, but because European seas are, there are non-EU countries across European seas, so we need to take it also a step further.
Yeah.
Thinking about, for example, the Mediterranean, because I'm Greek in origin, and the lack of the big gaps we have there based on raw data or data products or best practices that people are using to collect such data. So I think the training part that was mentioned previously by Jay is also quite important to this aspect, and will help bring the message along, not only EU member states that have the Ocean Pact and have initiatives that govern them, but also take it a step further to other associated, let's say, countries, European states.
Yeah, I fully agree. And indeed, I mentioned the Ocean Observation Initiative. Adeline, for example, she was there a couple of times already. We only met 3 times, actually. But indeed, that was also open, for example, for 2 regional sea conventions that we invited to bring over and exchange experiences. We had HELCOM, we had OSPER, we have invited the Sea Commission. So of course, when it's about best practices and standards, these also have a very local or regional, because of course the methodology you apply in the Levantine might be very different from one you apply in the Northwest Shelf, for example. So when I was saying member state, I was saying a framework that we must deal with, and it has to be open.
Yeah, I know it's not a very easy thing to do probably, but yeah.
Maybe just to bounce back on the member state expert group on ocean observation. Indeed, I think it's really important. As you say, we need to go from the top to the bottom and well, to have a top-down approach and a bottom-up. But we need to make sure that the top is aware of of the importance of the ocean observation best practice and standards in order to have, because there's a lot of national regulation that might be enforced or European as well. And when we think of the coming data wall that comes with the AI and how it will be used, and maybe also the lack of ocean observation that it might that AI might fill in. Yes. To sure that to say if we want to have ocean observation, which we need, and AI will not fill will not take the seat of ocean observation. We need to have those ocean observations made with the right level of standards or best practice in order for those models to be made. I'm not sure I'm that clear, but if we have the right data, then we have the right outputs, and if we tend not to promote those best practice or those standards to the good administrations, then we might not have the good fund to actually applicate this best practice or those standards. So I think it's important to make sure that also the one providing the budget are aware. So we
That is also leadership.
This shouldn't be the goal. You should explain to higher level administration how much money is going to save if appropriate observations are made and you have good early warning systems, you have good navigation systems, you minimize your risk at coast, you minimize your risk at offshore activities. This is the point. And then in the importance of observation, you will distill the importance of standards into more technical people. Because if you start there, honestly, the conversation is not going to move forward.
No, I agree, but I think it needs to be distilled, as you say.
It needs to be distilled in the more technical level, certainly, and in the implementation of the legislations, certainly as well. Because there are people that are in the member states, but they are not high-level decision makers, that they are actually implementing the observation. Most of the times understand that there is the need for harmonization stuff.
Yeah. One small thing to add to optimize the impact. The work that we're doing here with the best practices and standard system on the observation side and the data management. Is not to forget also the impact you can make in the research infrastructures. So not only by the member states, that is important for the monitoring they are doing, and some goes of course also to the research organizations there. It's outsourced, but so via the research infrastructures, which are very thematic, you can also reach a lot of the researchers directly at that topic. You need to bring them in more.
Following up on this and what Zoe also has mentioned, I think what we miss in our platform is a storytelling that could be actually targeting different types of audiences. Let's say, for example, for the policy makers and the EU Commission, if you are not adopting this or like promoting, fostering the use of standards or best practices, this is what you will lose in terms of money. This is what you will gain in terms of money, but also for stakeholders like businesses, etc., blue economy sector, etc. I mean, if you will, what you will gain exactly. So as a researcher, what you will gain if you will follow a standard or not really. I mean, you have also to create a good story behind it and to be convincing as well. It cannot be mandated, but I mean, some scenarios can be featured on the website, and that way, I mean, you will also improve the standards or best practices literacy as well. So this is also something.
Yes.
Just light bulb over my head. No, you were speaking also about the barriers to
Yes.
it. And this is exactly tackling one of the barriers, which in the end is finances. Also, if you look in the countries, also in the Netherlands, we think that we arrange it very well. But if there's some kind of monitoring taking place around a future wind farm or something, protocols for the executioners of the monitoring is very thin. So they usually just drop the data as is. There's no money spent on the data management because it's just an additional cost. Well, if you look to the total compared to the monitoring, it's really little, but they don't put it in. So it's just dropped. And then it's of course a big thing because it's put to a data center, do something with it. We do good things, I think, with it in Emonet data ingestion to find the
value, the value in that
high value ones. But then still, it could be such amount of work if the data management, in this case, then my expertise, is not done well or not documented well how it was collected. If that is not set in the protocols for the contract.
Yes, it's out.
So in that sense, it's such a message to the national governmental organizations, or that it should be targeted to that, because we cannot expect the EU at the EU level then to start saying that. No, it needs to be done at the national level.
But there is a question of whether in the calls under Horizon, you can ask that the methods be described in addition to the data provided. You could put that perhaps as a criteria.
Tenders actually usually there is this required. There's the open data framework that requires data to be managed as well. Interoperable.
Yeah, should be fair.
So yes, maybe it's a matter of better implement this.
To make it very concrete.
Yes,
that
should
practice.
That comes to this question. So how can the European Commission support the product adoption of European standards? It's somehow there. So
similarly, it should feed into the national normal routines.
Yes,
make them free.
That is one point. Actually, there is some obligation, let's say, or recommendation. Many, at least at in research project, there is at the member state. I mean, it depends on.
But it's not very often fulfilled. And
yes,
and the research project probably the biggest serial creators in around.
Yes, and this comes to some comments that we were chit-chatting before. Somehow could be nice to have a sort of KPI proving that this data, metadata, were really made available towards other user. So feeding some platform the Commission is already doing. So if going back to the point, if a data is available in Emonet, it means that the workflow behind has been implemented in a way that is sharing
and
the
it
data.
has a tag.
Yes. Sort of
trustworthiness and
Mm.
which is what we would like to do here. Absolutely, and make it the reference system for you and open to the world, because we are in a global context and the global context is changing, and the people in science are stepping back somewhere, and we want to prove that we have service and the value that we can step in. Indeed.
Again, state to you, which marine data standard evolution do you see for better supporting policy making at European level? And then I will also ask Christina.
Marine data standards evolution. Well, to be honest, I think there's already a lot of expertise on the table. There's a lot of, you just look at this room, and there are a lot of really knowledgeable people on data standards. And I think the path we have taken as Commission are put in order and optimizing things. I think that we don't really need every time to reinvent something new, but we should implement correctly the things that we have started. So example, Emonet. Emonet has a remit, and we know which one that is, and it's perfectible. We should perfect it. Maybe not go to open to other dreams or big, windows. And so here as well, a very good thing that I've noticed today is that the increase of frequency on best practices that recently has been made. So this means that again, there's attention to this and that we have taken the right path. So we should keep on working on this path, and we should keep on improving it. And improving it means improve in coordination, for example. Lacking, because as I was saying before, for example, in research or statutory monitoring, probably each institution has their own way of doing something, and that's their practice, and cares about the rest. So, and the Ocean Observation Initiative and the group, the expert group, is trying to do a bridge in between EU level and national level in a twofold direction. So go back, you come from the member state and you bring the problems and the experiences and the practices, and then you bring it to EU level. This is discussed, and then you go back. So I wouldn't see big revolutions, but I would say let's work on the assets we have. Let's not create new assets. Let's not create. Let's not change the world, because it doesn't need to be changed in terms of new things, but it needs to be changed in terms of implementation. This means that the community, though, and the working people behind this have to follow this, to support it also, this vision, and have to be willing to, because this will bring additional work in the beginning, and before you see that the additional work brings benefits, there might be a lag of time.
Yeah, and probably
But
this is also
will.
one point that, I mean, Adeline, you can also, Christine, you can comment, because sometimes these feedback loops takes a lot of time.
Takes a lot of time, but we have to convince
many people,
stakeholders, all the institutions, all the policymakers, that this is a value. So investing one will bring you 10, eventually. And if it doesn't, then we didn't succeed.
Yeah. So just on that point, indeed, and we have this IHO European Commission hydrographic network working group. So all the hydrographic service of the different member states are joining, and we make some assessment of, we try to share on the evolution of the policy making in the EU and how it affects us. And we've made this survey for last week, so it's really new, regarding, for example, the high value data sets and Inspire, and how it has impacted us and what do we see. And indeed, it was reflected that it was a bit complicated first, but the benefits of how the data are much more accessed to is really something that all the hydrographic offices have felt. And also that we don't have to make, one-to-one, providing a request. People are, autonomous. They can find it on Emonet, and so it's big work first, but then also efficient work in terms of it's time saving on the long run. So I think it's something that we need to have in mind. Indeed, in terms of evolution, I think we should have it more. So the marine data standards should be more used, or the marine data best practice, the one that we see as level 4 or 5, they should be more used by everybody. And I think we have lots of platforms for this. We have Emonet, which could, provide, which could tag or make the link to this library that we are making. We could, we should have it indeed in the horizons. Maybe, please, there is this platform which should be used in order to make your ocean observation. I think there is a lot of, easy easy pathway to this library, which could be used. And we also need to think about the future in terms of there are new, ocean observing platforms that are coming with drones, and this, I'm not sure of. Well, there might be no standards, and there might be no best practice or better practice or good practices, and it might be something we need to consider as well, to start with agreed standards, or at least to have a few ones that are used, but not every member state or every research institute making its own standard, own practice, and then to try to converge. I think there is something to do in the coming years.
You want to on that?
Yeah, I would like to comment a bit on that too, because it's really easy when you have best practices to have actually best practices that have to do, for example, with ecosystem sampling that has been going on for 30 or 40 years. But if you're building something new, if you're building new techniques or newer, at least, methodologies, then you don't have the time and you don't have that a practice that has matured enough. So in that on that level, on that timeline, you see many good practices popping up. So there needs to be some way of merging them, of proposing maybe to people that, okay, these are quite similar, maybe you should, use one of those. This is something, some way that people can understand what to use as a better practice, as a good practice, so that it can become better and it can become best eventually, so that they can mature. Because otherwise, especially people that are dealing with novel things are a bit lost on what to choose.
I think that if there is a higher level process running well, then every time there will be the need for some new technology, of course, we observing, and that will be onboarded. I mean, that's a matter of onboarded. But if there is a process, if there is a coordination on this, then it's just a matter of doing it. But there's a way outlined already.
Did you have another?
I have another.
This is for the future, because I think we are now into.
Yes, we are getting there. We already touched. This is a question that I want to.
We're already touching it, and I think this is really interesting if we look to the gaps that we are, the future future demands to the system, to the use of best practices and standards. AI, you already have it on the slide, and you mentioned it.
Yeah.
You should somehow try to figure out in projects that will start using our marine data that we now have in the system, what is the demand? How should you, they speak about AI-ready data. I'm not absolutely sure what it means. How can we provide the best context in the data, machine to machine accessible? So that's one. And the other one, I think, is related to indeed the upcoming low-cost centers in combination with citizen science. Very strong, probably funding-wise, very interesting, but we have a different type of user.
Yes.
And now we have experts. We're just talking over. Now we have experts, researchers. You can say, okay, if we can reach them, this is the best practice you should use for deploying. This is the data management practice. So now we have a citizen science group. How do we reach them? And so that's different channels. Probably we have to see, to look through the European Citizen Science Association, and we have a nice upcoming project, some promotion, CS Mark 1. I'm very happy with that. And
that will be in line with everything that has been built at the European level.
Because that's a challenge, and also getting in contact with these local sensor developers.
Yes.
What can they do with their metadata and their data to facilitate us, so that in the end, this data can also flow into all these beautiful data products that we're all working on, but now not taking into account citizen data, because they say, I don't know where it comes from. I don't know the protocol that is being used. I don't know the instrument. So that's a nice gap. And
Christian, one last comment on this.
think since Peter has covered the aspect of the data, maybe I could, when it comes to artificial intelligence, maybe it's a bit on the edge of this question, but how can it affect directly our system that we are building now and the way that we are approaching methods and best practices? I mean, there are direct operational issues that AI can solve in the next times to come, because we are assisting to a huge revolution that is passing out there, and what is expected is in the next years to come there will be a big explosion in hyper productivity of the work that society is doing because of the automation and the arrival of this new electricity, which means that our jobs are being changing, and the speed that we provide value as well. So this, of course, may have some direct effects on the way we should look at enhancing technologically the platform on the short term when it comes to automating workflows for submitting the practices or making the content being submitted to be automatically put into standardized templates. And of course, the metadata curation. I mean, we've been months now curating metadata and cross-validating vocabularies. When we start integrating different systems, different communities that use their own vocabularies, you don't want to do that manually, not in this stage anymore. So you need to invest really in automating the process. So on the short term, definitely when it comes to improving our system, that probably should be put in the horizon. But now, the thing is, when you look on the long term, because that's a vision that is also needed to keep in mind, the way that we are using the system, the way that we produce the documentation, that the way that we search the documentation and use it, it's presumably it's going to change. And now we are working with static documentation, documents that are getting into the system, but we are seeing what is happening with ChatGPT and AI agents, that you are able to create knowledge bases that can integrate, make cocktails on the information, and then extract value according to what you need. And that links a lot with one. I love that comment that Peter mentioned, that you need to get the right data to the right user. And probably it happens the same with methods, because Zoe was commenting today the aspect of, okay, convergence. Is it realistic in all the cases? Maybe in some cases, yes, maybe in some cases not, because depending on the application that you need to use and the level of uncertainty that you need to provide, you may need to get to one place or another with a method. So what AI can do in the future, when we fit well the models, because we have good semantic models behind on the documentation that we produce, is that we pass from a static model to more dynamic or adaptive methodology speaking, so that the user can interact with the system to get exactly the method that he or she needs, or it needs, because it will apply to autonomous platforms as well. We're seeing that with adaptive sampling, predictive maintenance, etc., to fulfill a particular task, context-oriented. And that's something that we probably need to start paying attention, because it definitely is going to change the way we are working. It's already doing it. And again, the AI agents is an example, and they are already available, and that technology is astonishing how fast it's maturing. So it's definitely worth investing on looking on how this will be used for automating processing. Of course, that's a cost-effective thing. It is running again on finding cost-effective ways of bypassing or affording sustainability in the long term.
I see Antonio that is wondering about some comments, so I want to ask you.
The comment of selectiveness of data and the users, I only partially agree, in the sense that salinity is salinity, and if it's measured in a standardized methodology, a user of physics or of biochemistry, if it's needed, or of any other sector, if the data is not only acquired and monitored in the right way, but if it's written so the format is correct and if it's fair, then all users can access all data, so for all purposes. So it's I partially agree.
Probably the thing is
we should
working
put
on the metadata.
unity position of accessing
All
every data by every user in the same, effectiveness.
Yeah.
And this is the target. I mean, if we have standards recognized, if we have formats that allow this, technology allows it now, machine to machine, and whatever capacity of computer requirements we have. So it's I think it should be this way. Everything accessible to everybody.
You want to?
No, just to clarify, I think I'm agree with that. Probably the comparison I was doing with the comment on Peter is, and connected to Zoe's comment is, it was more on the casuistics of the method will broaden a lot, and it's not the same. For example, like measuring uncertainty.
If there's the correct tag, if there's the correct documentation, which is I'm not expert in best practices, but for what I've read, it's a big issue. The documentation is a big burden on this. So if everything is, if all the tags are there, then it's pointable and.
Somehow also to close the session because we are running quite long than the scheduled time. The main message is that we need to be fair from the beginning, where fair means that we need to provide access to data and all the complementary documentation that let the user to see if that data is valuable for the application that is implementing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think based on what have been said, it's mainly to be systematic and consistent, because otherwise, I mean,
But this is part of the fairness approach that I was mentioning, because then
I mean, fear is really about the data and to be, usable, etc. But I mean, for the standards and best practices, there are key elements in the European Ocean Observing System to increase the readiness level of different components and how to monitor and observe different ocean phenomena. So if we want to increase the readiness level of the European Ocean Observing Systems to observe the different ocean phenomena, we have to really be able to keep up with the new technology, whether it is AI or other AUVs, etc., and to know to create like a framework that could integrate any best practice and to evaluate, assess any best practice that is out in the market in a systematic, consistent way. So it could be either recommended to be adopted or not in a very systematic way, because we will always have new technologies. Drones are now a bit old. There are newer ones. So, I mean, we have to keep up. And that's why, I mean, creating something more systematic, consistent and autonomous would help so much the EU and the observers.
At the same time, it's funneling towards something that is already existing. So you avoid, jeopardizing of effort. Peter, last comment, because, and I also need to apologize with the remote people because we didn't give the opportunity to but I mean, you have the question open, you can send feedback, so we collect them and then we try to answer to any question after the workshop. It was also worth mentioning. Yes, please.
My comment as well. Giving the right type of data to the right type of user. It's really important to have the data fair and to know exactly how it was created, because if you want to have a real good thing about climate impact in the last 20 years on the Dutch coast, you want to use only those data that is absolutely sure that it's scientifically sound. If you would leave it to a user just to say, here's the data block, press a button, you get, and the citizen data involved, you get all kinds of strange effects. They think, well, this is going terribly, very, very right. So then you need to do a pre-processed data set, the best quality set. While a researcher, you might want to dive into that, and they can see the content based on the fairness of the metadata. So that is the background, and so different services, different data to different users, and that was what we will always need to take care of.
Yes, right, absolutely.
I'm sorry to say it the way that I'm going to say it, but this is a very good excuse to keep data behind artificial barriers, especially data that is paid with member states or European Union's money. And this should be a tactic that should be avoided. I agree that different users need different data and different services. We are not going to achieve this by putting barriers in this data and creating intermediate structures that are going to provide to the user the data that they need. This is a way to make a complicated landscape. In the end, it is in our hand, with the infrastructure that we have, to start from the raw data and then make the services available, and people, they can choose what they want and what they need. If we describe it correctly, and if we provide the accessibility to everything, with controlling it, without controlling it, and control has multiple
Meanings.
interpretations. Time this discussion.
Okay, one does it right.
Okay, so I would like to thank the panel because it was very nice discussion, a lot of food for brain. I would like to thank the Office of Murcia because they hosted the event. I want to thank the colleagues for the wonderful work that we still have to finish because we are on pre-production. So I would like to thank the people that are remotely connected because they were very patient with us because we ran over the time. And as I already said, if you have any feedback, any comments, please feel free to share because we are eager to digest all these comments and try to modify and update the system that we are developing in order to make it fit for use. So I want to thank you all. Thank you.
I don't know if I'm supposed.
Yes, please.
I just had prepared some takeaway messages
Yes,
from
please.
the
Yes,
morning. I don't know if that was the idea. Like, just if I may. No, please have a seat there so we don't. Well, just to wrap up, so that we really wanted to thank you. We learned, all of us, a lot, even though we are not the normal users of this data. So we open with high expectations from DG Mare, assuring us that this project was the foundation of keywords in ocean observation, and that in the future there will be more support to this kind of projects and work. So that is well taken. We learn also about the rationale behind the repository with trust and interoperability, and also about the definition of better best practices. I can assure you that in the Brussels bubble, we only talk about one kind of practice, so it was really useful, so we don't take that for granted. And also other definitions, we need further discussions, as you mentioned, such as endorsement. In this framework, there were still open questions about how it should evolve, always taking into account the third element that you finally remember, the adoption and the uptake. We were also introduced to the new platform and its functionalities, and all the designs, everything designed to be easily used, and that is a work in progress. With amazing potential while addressing still improvements to be addressed. And also an interesting discussion on the challenges and on the next steps. Some thoughts about the user in the center, so easy to navigate, and the need of training for users for an efficient navigation. Also monitoring the different needs of using. I'll leave it like that because I saw that it was a hot topic. Key obstacle, the cost versus the free access, the key obstacle for adoption. Also the lack of culture on standards, the need of advocacy, and the need of better connection between stakeholders and the research community, and also coordination for better marine knowledge, and with the European Commission and the member states, and not only among member states, but also beyond, that we saw. So, well, that was a little bit some key takeaways. It was a very nice learning. So we thank you very much, and also the representatives from the European Commission for being here, and that is the wrap. So thank you very much, everyone.